Now this is going to look super cute. Okay, my dear sewing friends, so today we're working on, and here, I think I'm gonna keep it a secret for a little while. If I tell you right away what are we working on today, I do think that you're gonna feel a little iffy and unsure. So I'm gonna keep it a secret just for now. And this design has actually been around for decades. But all I want to tell you right now is that the top is going to be gorgeous. It's gonna come together quickly. It's really easy and suitable for beginners. And it's only one pattern piece. And it's perfect not just for summer, but all year long, because by adding or removing some of the elements, I truly think that it can be a really nice and versatile staple piece in your wardrobe. Not to mention that you can make it into a dress for yourself or for your kids, grandkids, nieces, friends, daughters, or anybody else out there. So without any further ado, let's jump right into it. That's right, there's two ways how to make it, and the first one is super easy. You don't even need, well, you need one measurement, that's about it. And all you need to get started is a t-shirt for yourself or for your child. So grab one of those well-fitting t-shirts, the one that is not too tight, not too loose, fits just right, and let's get started. Now go ahead and grab some pattern paper, wrapping paper, old newspapers, whatever you have, and your t-shirt. Now with your t-shirt, I would advise for you to fold it somewhat nice. Make sure that the side seams are matching and the shoulder seams are matching as well. And then lay it flat on your pattern paper. After that, I'm going to grab my ruler, and this is what I'm going to do. I will start measuring the length of the actual top from the seam between the neckband and the neckline. And then I will mark it as long as I want the top to be. And here you see I am marking it about 2.5 inches longer than the actual length of the t-shirt, because that's how I would like it to fit my child. So from the seam between the neckband and the neckline all the way to the length that you desire. Next, I would like to find out the height of the armhole. And if I take my measuring tape and I place it like so on the bottom of the armhole of the t-shirt, and I make a perpendicular line that goes all the way to the ruler, it will give me an approximate position of the bottom of the armhole, about 2.5 inches from the top of the line that I made. Now, because it is a t-shirt, usually the sleeve is pretty well fitting. Therefore, I want to extend that a little bit. Therefore, I'm going to add 1.5 inches, and I'm going to mark the armhole for the top that I'm making at 4 inches, starting at the top of the line that I made. Now go ahead and turn your pattern like so, and let's take a look at what we already have. We have the length of our top, we also have the placement of our armhole, and the next thing that we need to move forward is the width of our top, and here is where you will need the measurement that I was talking about. On the same level on which you have the mark for the placement of the armhole, I am going to take 1/4 of my child's waist measurement plus 1 inch on each side of this vertical line that is the length of our garment. She's only 2.5 years old, so it really doesn't matter whether it's a bust, waist, or hip measurement, because there's really not that big of a difference between these measurements in a child. But if you're making this for yourself or another adult, take 1/4 of your bust circumference and add 1 inch of ease on each side. And to better determine width of the hem of your top, you can measure your hips as well and use 1/4 of your hip circumference plus 1 inch of ease. For this next step, we will need to find out the width of the armholes, and here I'm taking same old t-shirt that we already used before, and I'm doing exactly the same steps that we did before as well. I'm taking the ruler, placing it horizontally, and then I'm taking the measuring tape and placing it perpendicular to the ruler, and this is the distance that I'm looking for. So this little bit right over here is going to tell me the width of the armhole for our top, and for me that's going to be 1.5 inches. So you see me mark that distance on one side of the rectangle on the line of the height of our armholes, and on the other side as well. Once you have made those marks, go ahead and draw straight lines like this, and then curve each one of the armholes. Then we will need to extend the top of the top by 1 inch to create the casing for the ties. And on the bottom, I will flare it out by 1 inch on each side to create a more flattering silhouette for my child. And I think by this time you have realized that we're making a pillowcase top or dress. Now this pattern piece is going to serve as both the back and the front, and we're going to cut 2 of those. Now for the fabric, I'm using this fun little piece of rayon, and this is one of my main suggestions, to use fabric that is really nice, lightweight or medium weight, but has a beautiful drape. As you cut your fabric, don't forget to add your seam allowances and the hem for the bottom of the top. Now, I draft all of my patterns and all of my videos without seam allowances or the hem, and I add them as I cut my fabric. So definitely don't forget about this step. Now, I prefer to work with 1/4 of an inch or 3/8 of an inch seam allowances. However, you can cut your seam allowances as it is best for you. As you can see, I have cut 2 of these pattern pieces, and now it is time to put it all together. As a first step, we're actually going to sew the side seams of this top by placing your pattern pieces right sides together, matching at the side seams. And this is the technique that I'm going to use. I'm going to stitch them first together, and then I'm going to finish the raw edges of the fabric by using a serger, a zigzag stitch, an overcast stitch, or any other of your preferred method. In this particular top, I'm going to finish the seam allowance all together. However, once I'm going to be making a top for myself, you will see the difference in what I will do there. Now go ahead and pin the side seams together, and let's go to the sewing machine to sew the straight stitch. After this, go ahead and finish the raw edges of the fabric. Now, once you have done both of the side seams, go ahead and give them a really good press if your fabric allows it. And now, let's move on to the armholes. Today, I will show you my preferred method for really nice, soft fabrics as this rayon, and it works like a charm, and you don't have to have extra bias tape on hand. So the first thing that you're going to do is you're going to fold your edge of the armhole 1/8 of an inch in, pin it in place, and then we're going to stitch right on the edge of that fold to secure the fabric in place. Now that your entire armhole has been folded and pinned in place, let's go ahead and stitch it with a straight stitch on the very edge of it. And in this case, I do go pretty slow because precision is everything. And oftentimes you will see that I also adjust the direction of the fabric and my project as well. And to do that, I simply stop my stitching, I lower the needle inside of my project, inside of the seam, and then I adjust the direction and the position of my project or my fabric, and after I'm happy with that, I start stitching again. And I do that multiple times on a single armhole because the curve of the armhole definitely makes it a little bit challenging to stitch on the very edge. So that adjusting the project definitely helps. Once you have done stitching on the edge, the next step for us would be to fold the edge one more time so that the raw edge would be enclosed, and then we're going to stitch one more time, but this time not on the very edge, but we're going to stitch on top of the existing row of stitches that now are about 1/8 from the edge of the fabric. That way, on the right side of the fabric, you will only see one line of stitching, and on the reverse side of fabric, you will see 2 lines of stitching that are one on top of another. Because the fabric is soft and the seam allowance is so tiny and narrow, nothing puckers, and after you give it a really good press, it looks really nice and flat. Now let's create a casing for the ties of our top, and for that we will need to fold the top of our top. Remember, we left 1 inch for the casings, so now we will need to fold in 1 inch plus the seam allowance that you left for it as well. So you're folding it in by 1 inch plus the seam allowance that you used. Once you have determined that, go ahead and give it a really good press. Now we will fold under the seam allowance, so that way the casing truly is going to be just 1 inch. Once you have pressed your seam allowance to the inside of the casing, so that way no raw edges are exposed, we're going to give it a stitch right on the edge of this fabric fold right over here. You are going to stitch from one side of the top to another side of the top, and that is going to complete your casing. You're going to repeat the same steps for the front and for the back piece of your pattern. As one of the last steps, we will need to complete the hem of this top as well, and this is super easy to do. Let's take a look. First, give your hem a really good press so that way everything goes as planned. Next, let's fold it in. Now I left 1 inch for my hem, so here I'm going to be folding it twice, half an inch each. And for you to see better, I'm actually marking it with heat erasable pen at half an inch first, and then I'm gonna fold it, press it, and then I'm gonna fold it one more time and press it again. Once the whole hem around the top is done, I'm going to take it to the sewing machine and we're going to stitch it down. And this is how it looks when the hem is all done. And the last thing that we need to do is finish the top. And here I offer you a really easy and simple solution. Go ahead and take a remnant or jersey fabric or any other stretch fabric that you might have. Jersey works the best because it has that quality of rolling the edges. Then cut a strip that's about 1 inch or 1.5 inches wide and of the length that is desired for you to go through the casings of the top, plus to have some extra to tie on the shoulder. Once you have cut that strip, go ahead and pull on it like so, and that will actually curl up the edges of the tie, making it look like a really cool string. And then you will take this tie and you will thread it through both of the casings, creating the actual straps for the top. And after that, your beautiful top is all done and ready to wear. As you can see right over here, I also made a matching skirt for my child as well, so that way you can wear them separate, but when you wear them together, it does look like you're wearing a dress. For the option number 2 of drafting this top, we are going to use your custom measurements and we're going to draft it from scratch. And here's what you will need. First, go ahead and take a string or a cord or a yarn and tie around your waist. Then take your measuring tape and from the nape of your neck, measure all the way down to that string on your waist. And that is going to be the first measurement that's going to go on your pattern paper. Once done, go ahead and divide it in half. Now, go ahead and measure your full bust circumference like this. Once done, on each side of this line, you will put 1/4 of your bust circumference plus 1 inch. We are taking 1 extra inch on each side to account for the ease and to be able to gather this garment at the top. Next, go ahead and turn your pattern piece like this. Now, go ahead and take this measurement, which was 1/4 of your bust circumference plus 1 inch for the ease. So take this measurement and divide it by 5. So take 1/5 of this measurement plus 5/8 of an inch, and that is going to be the width of your armhole. Now once that is done, go ahead and draw straight lines up from each one of these measurements as you see me do on a screen. And after that, let's talk about lowering the neckline. Now for me, I will take 3 inches down for both front and back. However, if you're not sure, you can always do a sample garment first. You can also open up your closet and take a look at your favorite t-shirt or your favorite top and see how low is the neckline there. Just remember that this pattern piece is going to be for both the front and the back. And once you have determined that, go ahead and draw a horizontal line like this from one side to another side. Once you're done with that, let's take a look at the armholes. For that, you can use any object that has a round base and just make sure that both of the armholes are the same. After that, go ahead and add 1 inch on the top for the casing. Alright, let's take a look right over here. On the bottom, on each side, we will mark 1/4 of your waist measurement plus 1 inch. After that, we will determine the final length of the top. Now, I want my top to be hip length, and that is usually about 7 to 8 inches down from your waist measurement. Now, go ahead and mark it there, and then on each side of that line, we will place 1/4 of your hip circumference plus 1 inch. Now, once that is done, the final thing to do for us is to connect the side seams from the top all the way to the bottom just with a straight line. If you'd like, you can always curve it in, but straight line here will do just fine. And you will do that on both sides of the top. And as you can see, the top is taking its shape and it looks pretty much exactly as the first top that I made. One of the differences that I would like to add is lowering the front and back hem by 1 inch from the center and then curving it into the sides. Another thing, but only on the front pattern piece, I'm going to do a 4-inch slit down the center front, and you will see how that is going to look like in just a second. And I do think that it adds a really nice touch. When it comes to sewing, there's really no differences apart from 2 little moments. One of them is the slit down the front neckline, and the other one is that I did press my seam allowances open on the side seams. So let's take a look how it looks when it's done. Here you can see the seam allowances pressed open, and the reason for it is because this fabric, although soft, is not as soft as that rayon that I used for my daughter. So here I definitely wanted to make sure that I don't have any bulk when I'm doing my armholes, and therefore I pressed my seam allowances open. As for the front slit, here's how it's done. Now first you will need to take the pattern piece that has the slit and with the right side down lay it open like so. And then you will also need some bias tape. Now you can either purchase bias tape or make your own. It's really easy. Bias tape are just strips of fabric cut on a 45-degree angle. My strips are 1 inch wide, which will give me 1/4 of an inch bias tape when it's all done. Now I'm also cutting some extra over here just because I need these for some other project, but you only need a strip that is of the length of the final length of the slit that you have of your front or back piece. Once you have your strips, you will need to make sure that you press them as well. Now you can either use a tool for that or you can do that by hand, whichever way. Usually, first you just press the sides of the strip to the middle and then you press them one more time, folding it in half. So today we're making double folded bias tape. After that, with the right side down of the bias tape and the wrong side up of your pattern piece, you're going to pin them together along the edge of the slit. Once that is pinned, we're going to stitch it into that little crease that you will see in just about a moment. Once you get closer to the bottom of the slit, just make sure that you pull it open as much as you can and make sure that you do catch the edge of that slit. And once you have stitched it all down, it will look like so. Now, with the right side of the front pattern piece facing you, you will need to fold over the edge of the bias tape like so, enclosing the raw edge completely and creating a beautiful little finish like that. Now we will need to put a straight stitch on the edge of it, so that way it will hold everything together. Now once it's all done, it will look like this, and if your fabric allows, give it a really good press. Now usually no matter how hard you press, you will still see a little puckering here at the bottom of the slit because we did not round the bottom, we just cut a slit and that was it. Now how I like to do that is very simple and easy. I just like to stitch on the corner at about 45-degree angle on the inside of my garment, which will create a really nice sharp angle of the slit, and that way it will get rid of that puckering and will create a really nice and smooth front slit. And that's it. As for the rest of the sewing, it will be exactly the same as we did for the first top. And also, I'm pretty sure you're going to ask, how does the top look from the back view on the adult? And that's how it looks right over here. Well, my dear sewing friends, thank you so much for watching. I truly hope that you enjoyed this tutorial and this really easy pillowcase dress or top that you can make in no time at all with minimal amount of effort but maximum amount of effect. Thank you so much. Check out this other video that you see on your screen for another sewing and drafting tutorial, and I will see you very, very soon. Bye!